गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। वणक्कम, pranam, and jai hind. Today we are going to discuss about the maritime developments in the Indian Ocean region and India's response to these developments. And to discuss this, I have with me Commodore R.S. Vasan. Let me welcome him. Sir, good evening and welcome to Gana Shot once again. Thanks a lot for your presence and you coming on Gunner Shot after a long time. But before we hit the subject proper, I'd like to tell my audience, complete lot who are watching Gunner Shot, Commodore Vasan has been the Director General of the Chennai Center for China Studies for a long time. He's a veteran of China affairs. Of course, he's also ace maritime specialist, having done the NDC and all that. And he's an accomplished scholar warrior, if I may say so. He's recently been to Taiwan and China as part of a think tank exchange group, and he has first hand knowledge of what goes on there. Right. And I keep interacting with him regularly, almost on a daily basis. And there is no occasion or there's no event in Chennai Center of China Studies where he invites me over. He doesn't invite me over. In fact, he gives me the privilege of speaking on some important topic or the other. And it's in this fitness of things that I thought he must speak to all of us. And let me give you the background. Recently, he gave an interview to Sputnik where he spoke about Mauritius. He spoke about the Indian Ocean and the entire issues which span the Indian Ocean as far as India is concerned, and how loss of Maldives. I wouldn't say loss of Maldives. The fact that Maldives is not a real friend anymore doesn't affect us that much. We are still in the game, and he explained this to the Russians very well. And also the fact, today's talk gains very great importance. It's a follow-up of what General Hasnain and I spoke yesterday. And what did we speak of? We spoke of rebalancing, we spoke of the Sela Tunnel, we spoke of the Agni 5 test, we spoke of the INS Jatayu at Minicoy, and the anti-piracy operations which are going on in Red Sea. Today, Commodore Vasan will focus on many of these or refocus on many of these issues, but highlight the maritime issues more and from a completely naval perspective and the China expert that he is. So, all yours, please take it on.
Thank you, Disad Shankar. First of all, I must compliment you for keeping up the tempo of Gunner Shots and the amount of interaction sessions that you have almost on a daily basis. You actually warm the topics of all the analysts are. So full marks to you and compliment to you and your initiative, which have ensured that people are made aware of not only the current issues but also of what the future holds for. So from that point of view, I must again thank you for this opportunity for me to interact with your wonderful audience. And also, you have taken an excellent day. I know it's not by design, but more by coincidence. The 21st March happens to be the 63rd anniversary of INDIIA'S 310. It is the old INDIIA'S quarter, INDIIA'S 310. And so many happy returns to all the Cobras, their families, past and present. I was honored. It was an honor for me to be part of the 310 squadron. And it's also the month, March. Everybody talks about the 8th of March. But, in the 4th of March, India was the first Asian country to commission its own aircraft carrier. This happened in UK on 4th of March 1961. So, it come a long way. In fact, for decades, it was India's honor to have been the only Asian country to operate a full-fledged carrier battlefield. So, our own tradition in terms of operating the carrier to protect our village of communication or extended areas of interest goes back many decades. Like I said, 6 decades plus. complement the visionary, skills of our leaders, but also the naval top-brass who have ensured that the India's maritime interests are protected. India is the only country offshore which is, the Indian Ocean is named after. Indian Ocean. No other ocean has the name of that country. So, offshore, when you look at this entire landscape, the first slide that Shankar showed you, so the kind of maritime expands that India. So, we are looking at an exclusive economic zone with a coastline of 7,600 odd kilometers and an exclusive economic zone because of the 200 nautical miles from the coastline. It gives you 2.04 million square kilometers. That's a huge area. And when you look at the strategic division, of which Indian Coast Guard is responsible, that is double the exclusive economic zone at 4.2 million square kilometers. That gives you an idea of the extent of challenge that India faces in terms of protecting its maritime. So I must, bring your attention to the recent activities. It tells you how Indian Navy has been shaped in the last, so many decades. I'm referring to the anti-piracy operation that was conducted, in the Indian Ocean region. More than 2,600 kilometers long. Between 2005 and 2011, the piracy activities had gone up. This is along the eastern coast of Africa, and mostly it's strategic to Somalia. Which the Gaza activities are taking place, with the Houthis coming in a big way, the piracy is reflected as an opportunity to go back to their old ways of hijacking vessels, demanding ransom, and using some of these as money. So, this is case in December, 6 enemy ruined, was hijacked by them. These are matters. So, there was intense action in the last 10 days when they came to know that ship has come out again and it's, indulging in piracy. So, when you talk about a mothership, basically the mothership is what is a command control ship for the pirates. It will invariably a hijacked ship. And that is used for controlling the operations in terms of taking over innocent merchants. So this is what they did. And and this entire operation was conducted by Indian Navy. So you will understand the kind of challenges that are there in carrying out an operation of this nature at 2,600 kilometers. You can well imagine the kind of distance that we are talking about, which is almost like from Kerala to Delhi. That is the distance at which we are trying to execute a coordinated operation to overcome the pirates. Please remember the pirates are armed. There are no rules for them. And they were not hesitant to open fire on anybody. So the Indian naval ships, Sumitra and Shankar, they were in the area. And in fact, nowadays all the naval ships use drones. And one of the drones that they used for monitoring the area was shut down by the pirates. So that was the kind of change. Now, what is the Indian Navy do? Not only did it escalate in a calibrated fashion, but it's the Air Force that dropped the mission to Marine Command. I think when you look at the videos which are there, which I'm sure all of you had a look at, this is the kind of operation that, makes your heart when you try. At 2,600 kilometers, the Air Force aircraft carried these Norco, Marine Commandos, and Pharaoh dropped them in the sea. You can imagine what is the extent of the operation and coordination that is required by carrying out these joint operations. Not only did they drop the paratroopers, Norco, but they also dropped what's called the rigid inflatable boats. And then, the game was up and they were able to overcome the pirates. And all the pirates surrendered and there was no loss of life. This is the kind of professionalism that was put on display by the Indian Navy, which has been globally acclaimed as one of the swiftest, well-coordinated, efficient operations that led to success. Please also remember that it's only in 2022 India had to enact its Anti-Piracy Act. That has strengthened the hands of the Navy. So previously, these pirates, could not be brought to book But today, all these pirates have been shot to the shores of India. They are on their way and then they tried in their ports under the Indian penal code. So why I mentioned this act is to tell you how long it has taken for Indian Navy to achieve this kind of a professional status in global affairs. So now let's come back to the maritime interest of India. As I said, now the Indian Ocean region, it is also central to the Indo-Pacific, a new geographical context. Is
So
a place that,
may
yeah,
I
sure, sure.
interpret the
Please,
one?
please do come in
People are
as
saying
often
that
as you can.
so 1 minute, sir. Your audio is not clear. Either you
Ah,
have to come closer and speak, or because there's a thing people are not able to hear you fully. We can't hear you. No, sir. Completely, we lost you completely. No, we can't hear you. Your audio is off. Your audio is off, sir.
sorry, that was muted, I think.
Okay, no problem, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, how much of it, what I said was heard by the audience?
No, it's okay. It just continue because earlier it was not so clearly audible. Now you're better.
All right. So, no, basically, what I would like to now come back to is the areas of interest that we need to look at, examine, and even control. So, which is where, we are looking at these huge areas of control earlier. Why is Indian Ocean region important? One is, of course, India is blessed in terms of geography. We have this subcontinent getting into the Indian Ocean, bifurcating it to the Bay of Bengal on the east and the Arabian Sea on the west. And you can see that, all the interests on the west and east can be identified. On the west, it's all about our energy security, or in terms of our export import things have to take place. Along what is regularly shown as seen as a communication. That means these are established routes along which the entire trade moves. And for centuries, India has been an area of interest for the West. Europeans, the Romans have come here, the Dutch have come here, the Portuguese have come here. And all this war to sort of look at India, it was a prosperous country at that time. And so these routes have now been identified as a field of security. So what are the developments that have taken place of recent history? One is, of course, this conflict in Middle East. You see that happening for that places, in terms of Hamas, which initiated the entire sequence of operations which is on our mind. Nobody is able to control this. So the dollar strip is where it's there. And because of this, the houses who are there have been attacking the fences. And this is happening in our area. So this
So may I interrupt 1 minute, sir? Your voice is still not coming clear. I don't know
okay.
if you'll have to come
I
close.
think, yeah, I'll just switch over to the mobile so that, this is not there. I'll just switch over to the mobile. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can't hear you. Your voice is gone mute.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry for this inconvenience, but I saw due to some technical issues. I hope you are able to hear me better. Please give me a thumbs up if you can. So, I just wanted to come back to the present scenarios of excess, which is related to the challenges that are faced in the Arabian Sea because of the recent development. And this is where we have taken proactive assertive action. So remember, from 1970 when we first came of age, I'm talking about the Indian Navy, we carried out the successful attack against Karachi and Asif, and our own carrier operated in the East Coast to liberate Bangladesh. So, there are it's been something exactly that has not looked back, and we have sorry. General Secretary, you just have to allow me to compile. I'm logged in on my mobile. Can you just check in on the mobile?
Okay, please allow get in, Sergeant.
I'm logging out from here.
Okay. Viewers, just wait. We'll sort this out and then we'll get back on track. Yes, sir. Just wait till he comes back because I think he's had some problems with this audio. So we'll just wait for him to get back on our thing and then we'll restart the whole thing. And as he was, explaining, he was explaining about the Arabian Sea and how the Arabian Sea has played. And yeah, there he is back. I'll just put him on. Yes,
Can you hear me?
Oh, first class.
Yeah, I'm so very sorry about this. I think there is some technical hitch due to Wi-Fi. So I'm very sorry about that.
Yeah, please carry on, sir.
All right. So I'm not sure where I left and how much of what I said was gathered by the audience. But I'm sure we can cover this up during the question answer session if something was left out. So basically what I was trying to say was that from 1971, when we liberated Bangladesh by employing the aircraft carrier on the East Coast and on the West Coast by these missile attacks, which was not foreseen. That's the first time that, beyond the horizon missiles were used by Indian Navy, and we were able to set Karachi on fire, the oil tank farms which are there. So, I again must bring back the focus to the current day developments, because your focus is on maritime developments in the region as of today. And what is it that the Indian Navy is doing to be ahead of the curve? So, in terms of that, while I did mention about the success of our anti-piracy operation recently, which resulted in the capture of the pirates and release of the innocent crew, it did not happen overnight. Please remember, we had the Mumbai terror attack, and the Mumbai terror attack is when we revamped the entire maritime security structure. I'm referring to the augmentation of the coastal security group. I'm referring to the maritime domain awareness program, where in Gurugram we have the IMAC, which is basically a information fusion center, and they are able to get all the information. And we also have friendly foreign country representatives who are sitting there collating information on a regular basis. And this kind of collation of information on shipping, on submarines, on aircraft, or anything that moves in the area of interest is what enables Indian Navy to understand the environment and shape their responses. So the maritime domain awareness is where gives you the complete situational awareness of which ship is located where, what is it doing. Also, after the famous attacks way back in 2000 and 2002 on USS Cole and MV Limburg, the complete structure of maritime security for merchant ships and ports was revamped using the ISPS. ISPS stands for International Ship and Port Security Code. And this came into being in 2014. And thereafter, it was compulsory for all the ships to use what's called the automated identification system. So in this case, again, the moment the automation identification system is switched off or switched on, who's that ship which is transmitting. Likewise, even in the case of the Chinese research vessels, which have been reported earlier, there are 3 of them which have come in the previous 6 months. And the moment they switched off their AIS, you knew they were into some tricks. So, this is what technology offers you in terms of your ability to reconnoiter, to monitor, and to shape your responses using the assets. As far as assets are concerned, today I think Indian Navy is very well placed, mainly because of the kind of geographic advantage that it has, the access to the Bay of Bengal on one side, and more importantly, Andaman Nicobar and the Lakshadweep, which serve as your forward posts. One on the Bay of Bengal, which is overlooking the Malacca Straits, and the other one, which is looking at the 8-degree and 10-degree channel, which General Shankar has taken the trouble to show you. So this is where you see that we have a phenomenal advantage in terms of being able to look at what is happening, in Malacca Straits or in the Southeast Asian countries, because without passing through the muster of Andaman Nicobar Islands, you are not able to enter the Indian Ocean region. So, which is actually the Achilles heel of China. The PLA Navy units, if they have to come here, they have to pass through this, and your surveillance structure, what we call the C4ISR structure in Andaman Nicobar, will ensure that every unit that comes out of Malacca Straits is monitored and is monitored at Gurugram, which I mentioned as the IMAC, where you have all the people which are there. As far as now, please go back to your previous slide, because there's an important one which you showed you. Yeah, you can look at this again. Here is where there were certain developments that took place. As you are aware, we had a very friendly government in Maldives all this while. And with the elections that took place last year, it was Muizu who came into power, and he is pro-China. After all, Maldives is a sovereign country, and there were a certain number of concerns, not because he is pro-China, but he also wanted the Indian forces who are providing search and rescue and HADR options, that stands for humanitarian assistance, disaster relief options, to move out of the country, which is happening by 10th of May. And they are going to be replaced by civilian crew. That's not the only point. The point is now Turkey is going to come here with their drones. And so these are some of the issues of concern when Turkey and China are together in this area. It complicates our challenges in this area in the Arabian Sea. So our own responses obviously has been to strengthen Lakshadweep. You saw that INS Jatayu has been commissioned. So it has a airstrip. More importantly, when you move beyond the inner circle, which contains our immediate maritime neighborhood, we are looking at Mauritius, where phenomenal amount of developments have taken place. Mauritius, Seychelles, and Madagascar are our forward ports because we have friendly governments, we have Indian diaspora, and we have many people of Indian origin who went there as indented labor. And all these people are very, very friendly with India. Which is where you had the Agalaga, which has come into operation now. So we'll have a capability to keep the entire East African coast under surveillance. And this is enabled thanks to the initiatives which has worked for decades. Did not happen overnight, because there are local resistance, there is a China factor, and you find that, so these are the factors that have to be taken into consideration before deploying the Indian Navy. What are the other developments that have taken place? We all know that Hambantota has been handed over to China. It's China that's operating the assets in Hambantota. And Hambantota was used by China's research vessels. But India obviously had to work with Sri Lankan counterparts, and they had said for 1 year there will be no research vessel activity in their exclusive economic zone, because the exclusive economic zone of India and Sri Lanka are overlapping. They're very close to each other. There's hardly any place between India and Sri Lanka when you look at the Parkway. So this is something that became positive. But however, now they have a friendly government in Maldives, and these research vessels have been offered facilities for turnaround. Even Sri Lanka, I think just last week, said we will not allow research activities to take place. That stands. However, we will allow any foreign vessels to come and take fuel, which is, I think, a very fair thing to do After all, if whether it's China or India, we have options that are required. And when you're talking about options, I'm again referring to the options that have been provided by Quad, where all the four are exercising the options to work together. And it's not a military alliance, has been indicated by them. More importantly, this Quad has led it to many other options in terms of vaccine diplomacy, in terms of HADR, in terms of enhanced maritime domain awareness, in terms of STEM, which stands for technology, engineering, mathematics, science initiatives. There is something like 100 fellowships which have been offered. So these are things that are helping India to sort of understand what the challenges are and be ahead. So we also have certain amount of transactional and fundamental agreements with USA, which has become a strategic partner. It's not at the cost of others, because I'm sure General Shankar would have discussed the way India has made its point related to continuing with strategic autonomy. That means we'll continue to engage with anyone who is helpful to us, and it will align with our long-term strategic interests. And it's not something that will be at the cost of AR, BRC, but it will be only to promote India's national interests. I think we are very lucky to have our External Affairs Minister, who minces no words in terms of articulating this aspect of India's new-found, self-belief, which makes it interact with international actors to promote not just maritime interests, but all-round interests of India, which is why we are buying oil from Russia. We are refining some of it and selling it to the West. We are buying oil from USA. And the Middle East equations are such that the oil prices have been stabilized thanks to these kind of equations which have been established by India in the international energy markets. So, India has become a dominant player. And also, for a long time, we were at a disadvantage because of the inability to field SSNs and SSBNs. I'm talking about the nuclear second strike capability, which was not with us. But with the commissioning of INS Arihant and its follow-on submarines, today we can deploy these submarines anywhere in the Indian Ocean or in the Pacific for that matter, to ensure that our second strike capability, because of our persistence with the no first use policy, is something that is secured, which is where we have secured our second strike capability options by using these assets. And you saw that, I think yesterday General Shankar looked at the MARV options which have been given to us by Agni 5, and that makes it easy for us to ensure that we have multiple options from the land, from the air, and from the sea to take on our nuclear adversaries as and when some of the Lakshman Rekhas are violated by either of them. So this is, I think, another maritime dimension that should not be lost sight of. Also, as far as the Malacca Straits, which are there, which is close to the Port Blair, we have again initiated many initiatives. The recent development that happened in 2023 is related to the very first exercise that Indian Navy conducted with ASEAN. ASEAN as a bloc was always hesitant to say that they are going to exercise with other forces which were considered inimical to Chinese maritime interests. But for the first time, this exercise that was conducted last year has reinforced the belief that even ASEAN is trying to examine its options. Singapore, Indonesia, and many others have been, looking at India as a very good, viable, positive alternative to their own engagements with China. Indonesia has even gone to the extent of offering Sabah, which has very deep waters. I would go to the extent of saying that, a submarine perhaps could even remain submerged alongside. So there's a kind of depth that is there. And so this is where India is adding to its options in the maritime domain. And our own aspect, I think last time when General Shankar called me, I was looking at and examining the options that is provided by Galathea. Galathea is what I'm looking at in the Car-Nicobar area, where we are developing a dual purpose port. This will also be a hub for transportation. It will be like Singapore, Sri Lanka, Colombo ports. But more importantly, the depths that are there will allow you to deploy your entire fleet of submarines as and when the situation so demands. So this is another development of importance because the neighbors are now encouraged because they realize that India is not only a first responder, number one, it's also a net security facilitator in the region. These terms have been used left, right, and center. First responder, net security provider, net security facilitator. But the meaning is one and the same. That India, right since 2004, when it came in a big way to help out its neighbors in Indonesia, in Maldives, in Sri Lanka, after the tsunami, 2004. Again, during the water crisis in Maldives. And in 1988, when Operation Cactus, when we went there to rescue the Maldivian leadership, which was taken hostage. So in all these cases, we have demonstrated our resolve to help out our neighbors without expectations at all. Even in the case of Sri Lanka, when they were facing economic crisis, it was India that went to their aid by giving something like $4 billion plus as a bailout package. And all this again has happened without expectations. So this is what India's, India to the neighbors, because again, Sagar, this is Sagar also actually means ocean, but in the Indian context, our leadership has said that this retains its security and growth for all in the region motive, and that is without compromises. Likewise, it is the neighborhood first policy. That means you are going to engage with our neighbors, whether they are landlocked. The new term that's being used for landlocked countries like Bhutan, Nepal, Afghanistan is they are land linked, because the UNCLOS, the United Nations Conventions on Laws of the Seas, provides for these countries, Bhutan, Nepal, to use the sea access through friendly countries. In fact, even before 1956-57, Nepal was using the facilities in Kolkata. It's just that over the period of years, due to many reasons, these land-linked countries, stopped using this facility. But we will be adding to their growth, prosperity, and maritime options by allowing them access to these ports which are there, whether it's on the west or on the east. So this will be another development that has to be taken into act. So to look at some of these areas which we are looking at, I don't know how much time I have, General Shankar.
You can carry on, sir. No problem.
Okay. So, I can go on and on, but you'll have to tell me when to stop.
So, 10 minutes, then we'll take some questions.
Sorry, come again?
Another 10 minutes or so, there's no problem.
All right. Just give me a thumbs up when you want me to stop. So, just to look back at the kind of journey that India has engaged in terms of building its maritime capability. Let's not again forget, though I mentioned that on 4th of March 1961, we commissioned INS Vikrant. Another important milestone was commissioning the second Vikrant, which is our own, and it happened in September 2022. And the beauty is that today we are operating 2 aircraft carriers together. You would have seen some of the pictures of these 2 carriers operating, carrying out multiple operations simultaneously. This is the kind of professionalism that's been demonstrated by Indian Navy, and this did not happen overnight. This has happened of decades of constant struggle to increase its own competitiveness, and also this has happened because of its progressive outlook and Atmanirbharata, which everybody swears by today, was something that the Indian Navy adopted in the 70s. We not only built our own small boats, but in 1972, we built our own frigate. I'm talking about 1972 when Nilgiri was commissioned. And thereafter, we did not stop at that. We built Vindhyagiri, which was capable of operating 2 helicopters simultaneously. So, so while, the Atmanirbharata is something which people are looking at in a new way today, Indian Navy embraced it 50 years ago. So this is what has held us in good stead. We've been able to build ships of not just Vikrant, but we built our own nuclear submarine. We built our own ships of the Kolkata class, the Project 15 Alpha. We are now building our own submarines. Perhaps I think as far as submarines are concerned, it may still be a little too early to say that we are building our conventional submarines. Though we built our nuclear submarines on our own, the conventional submarines, we are still looking at France, we are looking at other options which are there for the Project 75. And again, we need to acknowledge the fact that the any force which is there is made up of the people who man this and the way they are trained. So I'm again referring to what you saw as Marcos, the Marine Commandos, who've been trained to this extent, where even SEALs would be very proud of what our Marcos have done. We have commissioned our own Naval Academy, which I had the good fortune to visit just last week, and it's something world class. Which has the capability for training something like 700 to 800 cadets at any one time, including foreign. This is where this diplomacy and using Navy as an instrument of foreign policy has worked to India's advantage. We've been very visible, we've been proactive, we've been helpful to our neighbors. We go out of our way, as was demonstrated in rescuing this pirated vessel 2,600 kilometers away, where we deployed not only our own ships, but we requested the help of Indian Air Force. We used the C-130 or C-17, which were able to drop these people in an area. It's a well-coordinated, precise operation of which any Navy would be very justifiably proud of. No, this is what we are made of. And a big salute to all the people who are manning the Navy today. And the Navy of today, is deploying ships on mission-based thing. It's called the Maldives. Can you just go back to one of your slides, that yellow slide, which showed various dispositions?
1 minute.
The other one with the yellow background. Yeah. Now, when you look at this, in this, you reminds you of the areas of interest, areas of potential conflict, and areas where things are happening on a daily basis. So the Indian Navy has moved on to what's called mission-based deployment. So there are 8 places which have been chosen, including the choke points. The choke points are where you have the Straits of Hormuz, you have the Bab el Mandab, you have the Red Sea, you have the Malacca Straits, you have other straits which are there. All these are identified as choke points. The Indian Navy has deployed its assets on a regular 365 basis. No, that will tell you how Indian Navy has been the first responder. They're already there. It's not that they have to sail out from Bombay and reach a place. They're already there in an area where it's required. Our shore-based aviation has come of age. We inducted the L-38 way back in 1977, where I was again honored to be part of. It was a Soviet Union acquisition at that time. We moved on to the P-8Is, which is sought after by the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army, because the kind of gadgetry that they have is something that multiplies their capability manifold. So they again are operating today from both the West Coast and the East Coast. And in the East Coast, they operate from INS Rajali, which is again, I had the honor to command as the first commanding officer. And today, they are all over. They have operated from Sydney for the last edition of Malabar. So, it tells you the kind of reach, the kind of influence that India today wields through its armed forces. It's not just limited to the Navy. Now, I do not want to take away all the credit and say it is Indian Navy which is reaching out. Our Army, our UN peacekeeping forces, our Air Force which are carrying out joint exercises, our Coast Guard which is exercising with many years. All these are our instruments of foreign policy, which primarily look at supporting our national interests, and thereafter are contributing to the might. So it is Navy which is there in the forefront of defense and development, because when you take your carrier Vikrant, the new carrier, to any foreign port, they look at your capability. They become the ambassadors. And as was explained, I think way back by Nehru, the Indian Navy is the microcosm of multiple states who are all there together representing Indian Navy. And it was Sardar Panikka, who said that whoever controls the Indian Ocean will control the affairs of the world. And that is a reality today. So, we are here, we are at the center, and we are honored to be here today on this August day when INIS 310 was commissioned, and in the month where Vikrant was commissioned, which laid the foundations of a powerful, potent, capable navy that serves the long-term interests of our navy. Jai Hind.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you've given a good idea, a full visage of what the Indian Navy is doing today. In fact, there's no doubt all of us are proud of the Indian Navy. And what you have said, I think, let me reiterate, and through this map. Today, Indian Navy has its presence at Agaliga, it has its presence in Minicoy, it has its presence in Lakshadweep, it has its presence in Oman, it has its presence in the Red Sea, where 12 ships are operating. It has its presence in Port Blair and Galatia, where things are coming up. And of course, the mainland is also there. And with our operations in Malabar exercises and operating as far as away as Sydney, virtually we are all over the Indian Ocean at some point of time or the other. Made a very major point. And why I making this point is this map is very important for everyone to see and understand. And correct me, sir, if I'm wrong. When the Indian Navy is all over fighting pirates, being ready for any eventuality X, Y, Z, you look at the Chinese Navy, the PLA. The PLA is arguably, or not without any argument, is today acknowledged to be the biggest navy. But what is it doing? It is sitting in Djibouti. It is exercising off the Gwadar coast. It is stuck in the first island chain and doing nothing more. And yesterday, someone did tell me a comment, and which I want to repeat. It's not the size of the dog which matters, it's the fight in the dog.
Well said.
And Indian Navy is showing that it's a dog with a fight. And, you know, uh, our main competitor, and where everyone is talking of today, is the Maldives, where China has made some presence. But I still feel that Maldives is far away from being a base. They might have some military ties, but I don't think Maldives has the qualifications of being a base as it. And I don't think India will allow that to happen also. We have to do that. So that's what I just thought I'll put across. So I'd like you to explain how Maldives has been cornered, because this is something which you explained very well in your article in Sputnik, your interview in Sputnik, that we shouldn't be too bothered with the kind of activities which we are doing around Maldives. A few words from you on that, and then I'll take questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that the interesting analogy about the dog that bites and the dog that barks. The point is very simple. Numerically, the PLA Navy may have more than what even the US Navy has. The point is that, correctly as you brought out, if you have too many of these disputes in the South China Sea, you find that you have to put away a certain number of fixed assets there. These ships perforce have to be in that area. Therefore, what is the balance number that is left for you to carry out your missions in the Indian Ocean region? Just yesterday, day before, we saw that there were attacks on Gwadar. Everybody kept talking about Gwadar and saying, that is going to give many options to China. But the point is that when you are trying to choose to build an asset in an area which is, full of these issues, this is what you pay. Because there is continually attack. The China POK economic order is under constant attack. So coming back to your Maldives, on one hand, we did say that Maldives is important. It continues to be important, and as they say, the only thing constant is change. It's not that Muizu is going to be there forever, and it's not that the entire Maldives population is against India. 50% or 48% of those people, and in fact 100% of the Maldives still depend on Indian help for medical evacuation, for search and rescue, for many of the items that go from Kerala, from Karnataka, for that matter, from Mangalore. This has been the dependence not of today. It is from the time when the Hindu kingdoms ruled Maldives centuries ago. So, this historical correct is something that cannot be obliterated overnight just because you have a president who is pro-China. I would like to reiterate again that when Yamin came into power, there were similar kind of sentiments expressed to say that Maldives is out of our hand. But what happened? The local population, who are the people who determine who should they choose, brought back Nasheed at that time. And now again, Muizu is here. It's fair enough. It's a democracy, and we respect, despite the size, we respect this as a sovereign country, and we allow those people to choose. No, I did not mention one more thing due to constraints of time. This is a new terminology, not exactly very new, but not very people are familiar with what's called the double fish hook strategy, because everybody is aware of the string of pearls strategy. If you go back to that map, I know it will be clear to our audience. Yeah, what I'm trying. So this is the one which I'm talking about. If you look at the eastern flank, commencing from India, going to the Coco Islands of Australia. I'm not talking about the Coco Islands of Burma or Myanmar, but the Coco Islands of Australia, and then come all the way to Diego Garcia. That forms the eastern part of the eastern hook. And the western hook starts from Duqm, where we have facilities in Oman. And then you go along the islands which are friendly with us. I'm talking about the Mauritius, Seychelles, and others. And if you go all the way down, and you find that is the eastern hook. The western hook and the eastern hook are, when you put it on the map, it looks like a double fish hook. So while everybody has been talking about the string of pearls, the double fish hook is the strategy that has emerged by continuous interaction with our, neighbors who are far away from India, but close to where action is. I'm talking about the African coast on the west, and on the east coast along the Southeast Asian countries area and in the Western Pacific. So these are things which we should not lose sight of in terms of the geographic advantage that India enjoys. Nobody can change geography today. And therefore, this is what we have used, and full marks to the government of the day. In the last 10 years, there's been a phenomenal amount of emphasis on building these bridges with our neighbors who are in the extended outreach of India in the Indian Ocean region. And that is what is going to pay us rich dividends. There are certain things which are happening in Seychelles, and that's something that's fine, because it is work in progress all the while. It's not that Rome was not built in a day, as everybody tells you. Therefore, some of the results that you see today in Agalaga is not a result of what happened in the last 3 years or 5 years. It's been something that's been happening for a decade and a half plus. So, successive governments have to work to ensure that our maritime interests are protected, and we are able to project this image of a benign country in the region who will continue to facilitate growth, facilitate prospects of our friendly countries through blue economy initiatives, through neighborhood first initiatives, and through Sagar. I think this has been received very well in terms of how India looks at the campaign as one earth, one family, one future. This is what we comply with, this is what we honor, and that's what endears us to the global population today. And the leadership of G20, again, where many of the maritime initiatives were looked at, and again, Raisina Dialogue, where we looked at some of these options, tells us that India is the leader of this century and has a central role, has a pivotal role in shaping the destiny of the earth to which we belong. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. You planned it out very nicely, and you explained the double fish hook strategy, which is something new, and we'll build upon it in the future things, future dialogues which we have. You also said that we have gone out, and there's no looking back. And I have someone from Pakistan who's listening to us, and he has a question. So I'll start with him. This question. He says, how Indian Navy is working to maintain its offensive posture in Indian Ocean, considering role against China and as a front role in Quad, in spite of lacking manufacturing capabilities.
Can you just repeat that question? Looks like I missed out the first portion.
So please hear. Don't worry, sir. How is Indian Navy working to maintain its offensive posture in the Indian Ocean, considering its role against China and as a front role in the Quad, in spite of lacking manufacturing abilities?
This has been acknowledged as one of the weaknesses of India in terms of, our dependence still on imports. So whether it's a Rafale that's come from France, whether it is the frontline warships, some of them which have been imported. This we acknowledge is one of the weak areas, but luckily, this Atmanirbharata or self-reliance is something that is paying much dividends, more so in the case of the Navy. In fact, many of the weapon systems which are there are coming out from our own depots, our own laboratories. The some of the heavyweight torpedoes which have been tried out recently were designed in NSTL, the National Scientific Technological Laboratory. And you would have seen the newspaper report that NPOL is now going up to 6 kilometers progressively in terms of manned submersibles. What it does is, it's not just that platform. It's a kind of technology that goes into it, whether it is the MIRV, whether it is your own K5, K4 derivatives. All these are something which will be adding to your punch. And please remember, like I said earlier, a geography that comes to your rescue, and also some of these engagements with like-minded partners. Like, nobody is going to tell you that, when the balloon goes up with China, America will, have boots on the ground. It will not happen. But the LEMOVA and various exchange options that we have with these countries allows you to master the information domain. There will be phenomenal amount of intelligence exchanges. It's happening in the real time even now. So these partners who are there would be able to help you with the challenges that you may face in the maritime domain. The offensive punch as far as Indian Navy is concerned is even today phenomenal, because BrahMos, which we have exported to Philippines, after we got into the MTCR, has given you an option for indigenously developing and extending the capability to 1,000 kilometers plus. And these are precision weapons. General Shankar has been in the know-how of this for many years, and he will tell you how accurate these are. Along with the MIRV technology now it's demonstrated, you are going to complicate the entire, counters that, any of these adversaries like to deploy against such supersonic and hypersonic missiles, which will be in the future. But we acknowledge that the drones which have been inducted in big way is going to change the way maritime war or any war is fought. I told you also the drone that was the spotted drone that was sent by a warship was shot down by the pirates. So that is the reality of the new mind games that will be played in the backdrop of technological advances that will change the landscape of battlefield, whether it's in the maritime domain or in the Air Force domain. But we are aware of our limitations. We know we carried out a SWOT analysis, and we know what to do when the balloon goes up. Thank you. And some of the other things are in the classified domain. So therefore I will not draw any references to those.
Thank you, sir. Suresh has become a member. Welcome, Suresh, and thanks a lot for joining in. The question here, this question is, with the availability of an augmented missile shield with offensive capability created by Bharat, the maritime threat presented by an enlarged Chinese Navy is mostly neutralized or largely neutralized. Your views?
No. So China's, as far as China's challenges are concerned, they're very peculiar. One is they have to deal with the lake called South China Sea or the Indo-China Sea. And within that lake, I call it a lake because of the depth profiles which are there, and also because of the presence of, so many disputants there. It has issues with Vietnam, it has issues with Brunei, it has issues with Indonesia in the Natuna Islands. It has issues with the other forces which are close to US. I'm talking about Japan, Okinawa, I'm talking about Philippines, I'm talking about the bases that US Navy has in large number. I'm talking about the future prospects of AUKUS, which will bring in the three nations, Australia, USA, into the picture. And so these are things that are challenges that China faces in its backyard. So it's not that overnight it has the capability to come out and deploy its assets in the Indian Ocean region. It realizes its limitation, and which is why it's created a Djibouti. But Djibouti, when you go there, if you go to Google Earth and look at the kind of assets which are there, you have virtually every navy which is there. So it is not that Chinese Navy will escape detection, because every vessel that sails out is detected simultaneously. So the challenges for China are huge in the maritime domain. First, it has to safeguard its encroached areas in South China Sea. It has to deal with the emerging capabilities of Philippines, Indonesia, who are all, enlarging their maritime inventories, their military inventories. And, this is where, we have an advantage in terms of maritime geography. And now with the partnerships that we have with the players in the region, in the Pacific, and with our look east policies, which became act east, we have many more friends there. So, how many friends does China have? There's a question that we must ask, besides North Korea and Pakistan and maybe some of the smaller countries because of economic dependence. So, China's challenges are multifarious, not just in the South China Sea, but also in the Indian Ocean region because of what I have always referred to as tyranny of distance. That means, he has to travel 10 to 12 days to come out from South China Sea and reach the shores of Africa to protect its energy interests. This is where India has the capability to strike at will at any target in the Bay of Bengal or in the Arabian Sea. So all this is something that is going to, challenge in China's ability to wage a war in the maritime domain. It's a different kettle of fish along the border, of which, I'm sure General Shankar has discussed with General Hasnain yesterday. So, the contours are very different.
Yeah, I think you made a very valid point, sir. China might have a big navy, but it has got big problems also, which are near its shore. And this big navy, only a residual part of this navy can come far away. And that residual part is not effective as of today. Tomorrow it might change, but that's a big thing.
True.
We have a small navy, or maritime geography force multiplies this navy of ours and gives it the ability to go far and wide in the Indian Ocean to dominate it the way you have put it across. I think that's a huge plus which all of us have to realize, and that's what you have actually highlighted today in your talk. That, like I said, yesterday's talk the comment which I got, it's not the size of the dog which matters, the fight in the dog matters more. Right. It's not got out of my head completely. Okay. Right. Another question. It's on Maldives. Though you answered it, I'll take it still. And this is from, on Maldives. Assuming worst case scenario, if China arms Maldives up to the teeth, what scale of threat to Bharat can this 300 square kilometer area nation spread in 1,000 islands pose in military terms? It's a answering question, but I'd like you to, even though the question is answer is obvious, I'd like you to talk about it a bit.
Sure. Thank you. No, I think it's an interesting way to look at the kind of challenges that Maldives will perhaps pose because of its pro-China stance. That's not the only thing. As I brought out earlier, the fact that our decade-old existence as friend, is something that's been now put to test. I'm talking about the order that was issued to say that we must withdraw our military personnel and there should be no military boots after 10th of May. That did complicate the matters, but it's not that overnight you can ask somebody to leave, because this have happened after agreements were signed on both sides with an understanding as to how these platforms, helicopters and the Dornier aircraft, and the personnel would be supported by mutual agreements. So you can't check those agreements overnight. It takes time, which is what has happened in this case. So the agreement that there will be civilians who will operate these assets to continue to provide search and rescue and succor for the people who may be affected is an important development. So it's not that anything is lost. We're still doing the same job, but maybe we are doing without the uniform personnel, which is fine. A more important issue is related to the supply of drones. I'm talking about the TB2 drones, which Turkey will, supply to this. And Muizu has said, this will be used for surveillance. No, okay, fine. We have those drones which will carry out surveillance. But who is going to respond to an emerging threat to Maldives, a la Aka Cactus? What if there are mercenaries again who would like to come there? Who would rescue you? The drones are not going to rescue you unless they are armed drones. And we are not talking about armed drones being supplied by Turkey. But this will be small steps that will be taken by Turkey and China to get their foothold in Maldives. That is the dangerous challenge that is there. But again, all these islands, whether it's Hambantota, whether it is Maldives, are all within the striking range of India, Army, Navy, Air Force. So therefore, the moment they militarize any port there or any facility, it becomes a target. It's not a friendly nation anymore. Hambantota is still friendly because it's not a military port. It is still a commercial port. So I think we have to draw a distinction in defining what these assets are, how are they defined. A mere location of a drone out there is not going to change the way surveillance is being carried out by them. So the helicopters, Indian helicopters, the Dorniers will augment the surveillance architecture of Maldives. That means we are still in the game. And however, there are changing equations. And like I said, it is not that is the end of all good relations between India and Maldives. Even Muizu will have to acknowledge that India is still needed in times of emergency, whether it is for medical aid, whether it's for surveillance, whether it is for blue economy initiatives, whether it's for fisheries. So all these are something, there are determinants that are shaped in the future, which is based on mutual respect and good relations. And that today Muizu is there, tomorrow somebody else will come into the picture. So we don't have to worry too much about it. But as far as our counters are concerned, we are ahead of the game. We have our assets, we have our surveillance mechanism, we have maritime domain awareness, we have exchange information through the IFC, DFC, which is Information Fusion Center, and Data Fusion Center, which are located in Singapore. And all this is something which will bring about a transparent maritime domain, which is what we are aiming to achieve. If you know who is where and when and what his intentions are, then you are able to initiate counters in a timely manner, that we did in the case of these piracy attacks. We are present, we are omnipresent, and that's something that we should acknowledge. And it has taken considerable effort. Our assets are there round the clock in 8 places, and that is something that sort of reinforces our ability to be there where we are needed.
Yeah, that's important, sir. We are there where we are needed. And this need, we demonstrated that we are there where we needed, not now. We've demonstrated in 2004 during the tsunami. We have also now demonstrated we are there where we are needed off the west coast of Africa. After all, we are the only force which is battling these pirates. The much wanted Chinese force is absolutely, silent. In fact, even the US in the Navy and the UK Navy are also out of the equation as far as anti-piracy ops are concerned at this time. So we are there where we are needed, on time and on target. And that there's no two ways about it. And actually what you highlighted, that the Indian Navy is actually spread out all over, whereas bigger navies are stuck in their ports. That itself tells us big. The last question I'll take, sir, which you actually mentioned during your talk at that point of time. Probably Vishnathan didn't listen to it, so I'd like to spend a couple of minutes explaining it to him. He says, why is Bharat not developing Andaman and Nicobar as a financial center? Its size and location seems underutilized. You did speak of the...
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Please go ahead and finish.
No, sir. You did speak of that Port Galatia, where we are having to have a submarine base as also a financial base, as a port of trade.
All right. This is an important point again that you brought out. Because let me acknowledge that we've been defensive in our mindset in the past. Now, whether it is the infrastructure along the border, whether it is reinforcing our capacity capability in the Andaman Nicobar, we've been fighting shy, and we are almost worried about what China will think. But that is something which is in the past. We are not worried about China sentiments anymore. Thanks to the newfound resolve where we say we shape our destiny on our terms. And it's not going to be based on what you do or what you do not do. So no, we found that the after all the Andaman Nicobar, it's not that it was neglected. It was the only tri-services command that we've had in the past before transitioning to the new found theater commands, which are yet to take shape. And there they are looking at the maritime domain as the first one that will become the theater command. So we already have the foundations for a maritime theater command because tri-services command is functioning in Andaman Nicobar. But there were always issues related to the impact on the environment, which is why in these pristine islands which are there was a certain amount of hesitation in bringing in too much of military forces. So Galatia again, while we are talking about developing Galatia, there have been concerns on the environmental impact this there. So there is a balance that a mature democracy has to achieve between development and defense. So over here we have determined that Galatia is important for us in our strategic equations, and therefore even if it means a certain amount of environmental degradation, we will perhaps accept it, but we'll manage it. Because the EIA, I'm referring to the environmental impact analysis, which is carried out by our agencies, where they clearly tell you what is it that needs to be done to ensure that the so-called damage that is there is done. So Galatia, once it is commissioned, will be a dual purpose port. We should have no doubts about it. That means not just will be a transshipment hub, but it will also be a port where we will have our fleet. We might even have a forest and naval fleet, for example, because at one time people are looking at the forest and naval command. So it's ironical to say it's forest because it's next door. But the point was that these are some of the colonial descriptions that were made in terms of forest, southeast, etc. But over here, as far as we are concerned, we are quite clear because they commissioned along the entire length. When you look at this, it's in the public domain as to the number of airports that we have, not just Cornicobar. We have bars, we have Coast Guard air stations, we have naval air stations, we have army formations, we have amphibious forces. In fact, we're carrying out joint amphibious exercises shortly. So all this will ensure that the capability that we have in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, or for that example, let's look beyond the east coast. We'll start looking at Lakshadweep Minikai, which will be the eastern seawall on the Andaman Nicobar and the western seawall on the western seaboard. So these are things that are things in happening, and luckily even the naval budget has gone up. They're looking at 18 to 19%, which is a record high, because otherwise the Navy always remained a Cinderella service, and it did provide multiple options despite the small budget that it got, because after all in a developing country one has to manage the division of labor and also the funds that are allocated. So I I would not lose any sleep over the kind of capability that we seek to bridge along the Andaman Nicobar as the eastern seawall, and as an effective C4 ISR structure, that's command, control, communication, and reconnaissance. More importantly, the last R is not just about reconnaissance, but also about response. It's important to have a response mechanism, and that's where what we have is something that is very promising in terms of the potential that there is, not just because of geography, but because of what the Indian Navy and the government of the day are willing to invest in safeguarding our future interests in the maritime domain. After all, it's a maritime country. Thank you.
You made some very interesting points today. The most interesting point which you made is that the Indian Armed Forces, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force are there on time wherever they are needed and whenever they are needed. And we have not only a eastern wall, but we are now developing a western wall also. And we have extended our reach right down to Agalega. And with that, and our port and the facility which is coming up in Oman, we have the capability today to completely dominate the Indian region and be the net security provider which we've always sought to be. This is a work in progress, and this work in progress is very good considering the fact that we are the only nation which is carrying out anti-piracy operations at scale, which affects the international community positively. While the one much spoken of PLA sitting inside Djibouti and not doing anything, or it is not able to come out of the small lake called the South China Sea. And this is something which all of us in India have to understand. Now, before I sign off for the day, I'd like to explain to everyone. Think what Bill Hasnain and I spoke yesterday. We spoke of many things which were rattling China. Today, after what Commodore Vasan, despite the poor audio in the beginning, has explained to us the way Indian Navy has spread itself, right? Those who are in PLA and who are in China will have to sit up and think. They'll be even more rattled. Because yesterday we didn't touch upon the maritime domain in the detail which he has spoken today. We must understand India is under transformation. And this transformation is significant for one thing. It is significant for one thing because we have left behind the continental versus maritime thought process. Today, the thought process is continental plus maritime plus the aerospace thought process. And that is visible today. That is what is going to make India, which is already a rising power, the power it has to be in times to come. With this, sir, I'd like to thank you for your thoughts and how you clarified the maritime aspects and what India's response is. I'd like to thank all those who have listened today to this talk. Please see this again with yesterday's video, and you'll get a larger picture. And I would request everyone to tell all those friends of yours to see this video because it gives you a clarity of thought as to where India is. And thanks a lot, sir. Good evening to you, and good evening to everyone. And Jai Hind, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Jahin. That my apologies for the initiative which I did not realize.
No, but you gave a lot of value. I must put it on record because the amount of value you brought today was tremendous. That's why I made it many times. Thank you and good evening, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Jahin.